Hello and welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my custom LEGO Stranger Things Hawkins Laboratory MOC. Now, I know it's been a month and a half since my last upload. That was just because I had finals and stuff to do at school, but I'm back and I have a couple of videos planned. So let's get right into this one. I have removed the figures and vehicles so we can take a look. Starting at the bottom, you can see I used a ton of these kind of nougat type pieces, and I didn't have a whole lot of these, so as you can see as you go around, I had to use a couple of different colored bricks. But I do think this color really makes the whole MOC kind of stand out. If I had used gray, I think it made it look a bit more plain. We have a pretty simple glass door right there, and then above that you have these lights on that kind of overhang. You have these two windows that lead to the inside. Nothing on the sides of here, as you've seen. These lights are a pretty simple build. They were just some clips and studs, and when you go up, you can see the rest of the outside. These were just done with a snot technique, and as you can see, it's just some pretty simple grate pieces. Now, these are all in different colors, but because of how thin they are, I don't think it really matters. And the other ones are supposed to be closed windows, because there are some rooms inside of here that wouldn't be shown to the public. So these three rooms have closed windows, while the rest of this has kind of open. And I don't entirely like the look of it, but I did run out of these great pieces, so it doesn't look awful. Along the sides, you can see you just have these kind of tan brick details that I have going up to here, and it is like that on each side. And up here, you just have this kind of tan trim right next to all these satellite dishes that I've made. This one was pretty hard to make, but the other ones are just pretty simple. They're just these little dish pieces with some gray studs in them. And I think this top section looks pretty good. You can see, if I turned around, that it has a ton of just random kind of details around here that I did just to make the ventilation look pretty nice, you know. So I have some of these pieces. I made whatever these kind of structures are supposed to be. I don't know, it's just a ton of random bricks that are supposed to make it look good. And you have this tower with one more satellite dish on it, and a little kind of red light up there. And yeah, overall, I think it really kind of makes this whole MOC look very nice. I love the outside of this. I think it looks really good, and I'm very happy with it. One detail I like that I added to the outside of this building is you have all the ventilation units going up the side on this side, and I just think it looks kind of cool. But it's obviously not the outside of this MOC that took so many pieces, so let's take a look at the interior. To start off, I have kind of this pretty simple front desk area. Now, I'm aware in the show that the front of the Hawkins lab, the entrance, is this big open space with a ton of benches all over it just to kind of wait. It's like a big waiting room. But I didn't want to make that. I thought it would be kind of boring. So instead, I have this chair right here and this computer to log people in, with this nice little, box design because it's the 80s. I very much like how it looks, and while it's not show accurate, I do think it is a pretty nice little assembly. Moving on from there, there are two rooms to the left and right, so let's start with the one to the right. This room is the gate room from the show, where they're opening up the gate to the other dimension. Now, first of all, you have this pretty simple little door build with the fire hazard part on it and the red lights. And if we take that out, you can have a much better view in there. You just have these yellow safety railings that are all over the lab and the show, as well as just a caution, like tape type warning thing. Now, the gate itself is just this pretty simple assembly of like orange translucent bricks surrounded by these blue plates and a ton of just random black and dark green kind of vine pieces, which I think make it look pretty nice. Now, I know in the show the gate is like actually underneath the lab and it's right next to kind of like the bathtub or the water tank room, whatever you want to call it, but I did want to include it in here and I couldn't find another place to put it in, so I just kind of set it down there. And around this side, you can see some of it is coming out, which I also know isn't very show accurate, but I just love how you can kind of see the vine coming out on that side, and I think it looks pretty nice. Moving on to the other room, you can see it's just a pretty simple kind of science laboratory where they're testing the pumpkins out from Season 2. First off, you have this pretty simple kind of table setup with this little pumpkin I made on it. This is just made using these kind of bar pieces. And as you can see, it just hooks into that part right there on the floor. And the other setup in this room is just this kind of like shelving unit. I don't know exactly what you would call it, but if I can take it out, we can take a closer look at it. It also just has a flask on it and a little syringe, as well as another pumpkin, probably in like a freezer or something for later testing. The one thing I don't like about this setup is it blocks this window right here, but without it this room looks kind of empty, so I do much prefer it in than prefer it out. Moving on to the second floor, you can definitely see it is the tallest floor, while the other two are only about a door frames in height. This one's about a door frame and 2 bricks, and that is because the main part of this is the kind of bathtub or whatever you want to call it in the show, the big water tank that they stick 11 in to have her like sensory deprivation. Now, I know, again, in the show it's supposed to be down near the gate, but I really like how it looks kind of in the center of here, because it's, you know, it's this big part of the lab, and it's probably the most iconic part other than the gate. So if we take a look at it, you can see I have just this pretty simple control panel with a ton of random screens I have on there, and some pressure gauges. This can be removed, so you can get a better look at this water tank. It is a pretty simple build, if I can just pull it out of here. It's just this kind of clear half circle, half cylinder piece in front of this black part right here. I wanted to put maybe blue studs behind it, but then I realized that wouldn't look too accurate to the show, and the black just adds to like the sensory deprivation kind of feel that they have in all those scenes when she's in almost like the void. Now, you can actually fit a minifigure in here, if I can show you that really quick. And they fit in just like that. You can put them on the bottom right here. And yeah, they just kind of sit there. And I think it looks pretty good for what I'm trying to accomplish. If you've seen the show, you definitely know what it is. One thing I do like is the piece I used for the floor is kind of one of those Junior's base plate pieces. So it adds really easy connection, and it allowed me to put these bars just like that. Now, behind the tank, you can see very faintly on camera, there's just some stairs because I wanted a way to get up to the next floor, and they have some behind the tank in the real show to help enter it, so those kind of do have a double purpose. Speaking of double purposes, if we move over to the other room, you can see it's that one room with the kind of two-way mirror where they study 11 to see her powers. You have this table right here with this Coke can on it, but the reason I brought up double purposes is because it can also be that room where they interrogate either Nancy and Jonathan or Hopper and Joyce, depending on which scene it is. But yeah, it's a pretty tall room just because of the bathtub kind of setup over there. But I do really like how it looks. It's the only wooden door in this whole set, as well as the fact that behind that you have this spray painted piece that I did for that one-way mirror. I wanted to have an actual Lego like mirror full-length piece, but it was very big and didn't just look too good in here, so I spray painted this with a metallic thing. The other detail in this room is that it has a security camera up there. But yeah, it's a pretty just plain white room. It doesn't look incredible, but neither does the one in the show, so I think that matches it pretty well. The last room on this floor isn't that important, and it's kind of hard to see, but I do like that I included it. As you can see, it's just that room where they're monitoring all the people of Hawkins' phone calls. Up there, very faintly, you can see the kind of tape recorder tile, as well as these 2 Lego telephones. And just behind that, I have just a black wall. There's a ton of space for people to stand in this room, and the only detail is really just that table. There's not much else to it. It's a very simple room, but I do like its inclusion. I feel like it looks pretty good, and this is one of the rooms where the windows are blacked out. Moving on to the top floor, you can see there isn't actually any rooms in the center of here. It's this kind of hallway build I made that can be taken out of the build. It's pretty simple. It just has 2 doors here and here, and not one here, because if there were 3, then it would get very cluttered when you open them all in the hallway, because 2 is already cluttered enough. But if I had 3, then I just think it would look really weird in that hallway. But that does let a whole lot of light into this build, and it also allows us to access these 3 rooms. Moving on to this room, you can see it is the room from Season 2, where they have Will in the hospital when he has like the mind flare in him. You can see you have just this pretty simple IV drip, as well as this lamp back here, which is adjustable. You have this very simple bed build with just these 2 bar pieces on the front and back. Right here you have a pill bottle, just a random bottle of whatever, and just a random computer. I wanted a heart rate monitor, but I couldn't find the one that I had. In here, you just have a syringe, if I can get it out, that is used to put him to sleep in the show, and there is nothing in this bottom drawer here. Yeah, it's a pretty simple room. It can actually fit the Will minifigure from the Lego set in it. It doesn't fit him incredibly well. It's a very tight fit, but it does fit in there, and I think it looks pretty good. As you can see, I've had to turn on my flash to view this part of the build just because of how far back it is. This is supposed to just be a pretty simple build of Dr. Owen's office from the show. You can even see that back behind this light, you have that kind of thing being printed out as they look at Will. Other than that, you can see the other paper on the desk, as well as a calculator right there, a pretty simple wooden chair, as well as this cabinet with nothing actually in it if you open it up, other than, the outside of the window. So I just keep it closed because I like how it looks, and just these 2 jars. This is the only other room other than Will's room upstairs with a window. But yeah, it's pretty simple, and I really like how it looks. Back here is the second smallest room in here. It's just the security camera room that Hopper and Bob and everyone are in the finale of Season 2. You can just see you have all these little printed pieces up on the wall. This is another room without any windows to it, because, you want anyone seeing your security cameras. And yeah, it's pretty simple. It looks, it does its job, and I think it looks pretty okay. And right across from there is the storage closet that Bob hides in at the end of Season 2. It just barely fits the minifigure that I made for him. You can see his flashlight has to poke out. And yeah, it's a very simple build for a storage closet. It just has a couple of jars in there, a broom, and a light in the back. And yeah, there is basically nothing to it. But yeah, with this middle part slid right back into place, the interior of this building is done. I did also make this Hawkins power and light van for this build, so let's take a look at it. As you can see, it's a very simple kind of Lego build for a van. It's based off of the bottom of an ambulance, probably right up to there. You can see I have these lights on each side during the show, and this blue stripe that goes across, which is a bit thicker than it should be, but I don't really mind. You have the 2 stickers right here, which is this numbering right there, and obviously the Hawkins power and light. You can see you have the rear view mirrors right here and here, as well as the windshield. The front, you just have that big grille with these lights on each side, and a license plate. Exact same around this side, and around the back, you just have these 2 red lights, as well as the back of the van, which, if you try hard enough, you can get to open, and it closes very flush with the back. I have brought in a few other Lego cars to compare it to, so let's take a look at them. First is Hopper's car from the Lego Stranger Things set. As you can see, they're pretty to scale, they line up pretty well. Obviously a van would be bigger than this kind of truck, but I do think side by side, they work very well, and that was my intention, because I do have both those sets, and I like kind of lining them up back to back. Next is the car from my Psycho house. As you can see, it's just this pretty simple black and white car that it also stacks up pretty nicely next to. I also have the truck from my Tremors video, which actually is a fair bit smaller than it, which is kind of surprising, especially in the back. And then, just for fun, I brought in the absolute behemoth that is my Christine car, which is still massive compared to all of my other cars. With the roof taken off, you can take a pretty easy look inside of that. You have this steering wheel right here with these two seats that you can fit a minifigure into for the front of the truck, but obviously the main thing back here is the back. As you can see, you have that seat which can fit a minifigure in it. So if I take the Dr. Brenner minifigure that I made, you can see he fits in there pretty well, but I will take him out to look at the rest of this. You just have these two consoles, as well as just another one of those pressure gauge pieces and nothing over there. And then right here you have a ton of accessories, that being a gun, a walkie-talkie, handcuffs, and a flashlight all over there. And it is pretty cluttered on the inside of here, but I do really like that. I really like how the interior of this turned out, and I think it's pretty cool. Now with those two parts done, let's take a look at the minifigures. I have made 4 minifigures for this set, so let's take a look at them. Starting with the most simple, we have this 11 figure that I made in the hospital gowns and the shaved head. Compared to Lego's figure, it's obviously a bit shorter because I use small legs and not mid legs, and the face is obviously different, but I do think they look pretty good next to each other. Obviously, this is just a plain white torso and some plain white legs. With this face, I just put a little bit of the bloody nose on. And I do have the alternate face as well, which doesn't really match 11 because, you know, this isn't a Lego 11 face, but I do think it looks pretty good. Next, we have my Dr. Brenner figure with this Lego hairpiece that I painted white, which I think really suits him. Other than that, you just have the Draco Malfoy face and this gray suit, which I think looks pretty good. It's a fairly simple figure, nothing on the back, but it does very much look like his character from the show, especially with the hairpiece that I did, so I really like it. Next is Dr. Owens. This is probably my least accurate figure. I do think the smile works pretty good on him, but the hair and torso I was able to get isn't the greatest for his figure. But within the lab, I do think he makes sense, especially if you have him like in his office or in the doctor's office with Will, and I do pretty much like it. Around the back, you can see you just have that little torso printing, but not much else to his figure. And last but not least, you have my Bob figure from obviously the scenes when he's in the hospital with Will. He has a pretty simple flashlight and walkie-talkie and is in this blue colored hospital robe. I wanted to use a different shade of blue for this, but I just didn't have the torso in that color. So I just decided to use this kind of dark blue, not dark blue, but medium blue used on the Minecraft Steve, as you can see along the back of that. And I think it works pretty good for the figure. You also have this earpiece right here on the side of the head, and the pretty simple brown hairpiece, and I think it looks pretty good. I think it's a very nice companion piece up on my shelf next to my real Stranger Things set, because I thought it looked really barren up there, and that really just helps fill in the space, and I'm very proud with how this turned out. So yeah, that's about it for my custom LEGO Stranger Things MOC. I hope you enjoyed watching until the very end of this video. I really had a fun time making this build and I want to make more like it, so if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye!